Yeah. This is Dr. Madhura
Good morning,
from.
ma'am.
Good morning. How are you all?
Good morning,
Fine, ma'am.
ma'am.
Good, ma'am.
Yeah. I hope all of you are doing good and great. So this is Dr. Madhura from Ophthalmology Department. So what I'll do is I'll just take off from where we had stopped. So today I will be talking about management of bacterial keratitis, and then I will also take you through fungal keratitis and its management. Okay, so we'll start off. Um, so when we talk about management of anything, any disease, we should be first sure about the diagnosis, and then we go on to treat. Okay, so similarly, whenever you are asked to write about management of any disease, so you have to first write about investigations and then write about treatment. So coming to management of bacterial corneal ulcer. So initially, it depends on history taking and clinical evaluation. So the patient comes to you with history of pain, redness, watering, photophobia, and the clinical features, just like you see on the picture here. You see circumcorneal condition and a white opacity on the cornea, which will be covered with slough. The very important finding here to see that it is in the active stage is fluorescein staining. If you remember, fluorescein is a vital stain. So when you put fluorescein stain, if the ulcer is in active stage, that is, if it is not an opacity and actually ulcer, then it will stain. You can see the figure below. It gives a brilliant green color in red free light. Okay, so there might be hypopaeon or there might not be hypopaeon in the anterior chamber, depending upon the virulence of the organism. And am I very fast, or is it okay?
No, ma'am.
Okay. So then with this, we go on to confirmation of our diagnosis. So clinically, we have suspected a bacterial keratitis, but how do we make a confirmation? For this, we need microbiological evidence. So we go on to the lab investigations. But before that, there is one important clinical finding which we have to assess, and uh, which we have to assess, that we can do by doing the regurgitation test. Regurgitation test is pressing on the lacrimal sac area and looking for anything coming out from the punctum, upper or the lower punctum. This is to assess the status of the lacrimal sac. So if at all there is a purulent or mucopurulent regurgitation, it means that there is chronic dacryocystitis. So in the presence of chronic dacryocystitis, whatever treatment you give to the corneal ulcer, it does not heal because there is a very close nidus of infection very close to the eye. Okay, so with this clinical knowledge, we proceed to the lab investigations. So in the lab investigations, what we have to do is the routine lab investigations, but most important is scrapings, corneal scrapings. This is done using different instruments, which I'll be explaining now. And when you take out the scrapings, what you have to do is you have to put them on slides and subject to gram stain and KOH stain. Also, a part of your scrapings will go for culture and sensitivity. So we'll look into the details now. In your picture, you can see that we can use 15 number blade. This blade is not sharp. It has blunt edges. Or we can use on your right top corner, the picture shows that we can also use a 26 gauge needle. So with this 26 gauge needle or your Kimura spatula or 50 number blade, we do the scraping of the ulcer. The scraping is done when you're doing the scraping. Two things you have to keep in mind. One is it has to always be done under slit lamp or under the microscope. One. A second thing is you have to avoid the visual axis. So the scraping is done away from the visual axis. Okay, and whatever little material you get, because it's not like any other part of the body, so the material obtained here will be very, very minute. So whatever little material you get, you divide into 4 parts. Okay, and what you do is one part you subject for gram staining. You put it on the slides and subject it for gram staining, and the other part for KVH staining. This is to differentiate whether the ulcer is bacterial or fungal. So in this picture, you can see on the left side, you can see gram positive bacteria. This is the example of Streptococcus. And on the right side, you see gram negative bacilli. This is the example of Pseudomonas. Okay. So we do this, and the other half we put it on another slide and subject it for KVH staining, which is specific for fungal keratitis. So we will know whether there is fungal growth or bacterial growth. Depending on that, we can plan our treatment. Okay. So next is the rest of the material. What we do is we subject for culture sensitivity. So here, do you remember what are the different media we use for culture sensitivity? The most common media for bacteria, for culturing bacteria is, anyone?
Blood agar.
Blood agar, very good. The pictures I have shown here is of blood agar, and on the top left you can see whitish material, that is Sebarod's dextrose agar, that is specific for fungal growth. The one below named B is what? Anyone?
Chocolate agar.
Yes, chocolate agar is specific for? Go back to your micro.
Haemophilus and Neisseria.
Yes, very good. When you are suspecting gonococcal infection, that is in ophthalm gonococcal infection, when do you suspect? In cases of? Go back to your conjunctiva.
Ophthalmia neonatal.
Very good. Ophthalmia neonatorum. Whenever there is a case of ophthalmia neonatorum and it is affecting the cornea too, you will suspect gonococcus. So in such cases, we use chocolate agar, but usually what we use is the blood agar in general for bacterial culture sensitivity. So what we do is the whatever scraping you have done, we will inoculate on the blood agar in the form of C-shaped, as I have shown in the figures, and then look for growth. Okay, so yeah, but then your microbiology report is going to take some time, right? So what we do here is empirically we have to start the treatment. We cannot keep waiting for the reports. So empirically, because we have made a diagnosis of bacterial corneal ulcer, we will treat it as bacterial corneal ulcer and start the treatment. The treatment is divided as specific and supportive therapy. What is specific therapy? Since we are treating a case of bacterial keratitis, the specific treatment is to treat with antibiotics. So, but when I say antibiotics, you have to be very specific in your answers, whether what is the route of administration of these antibiotics. So what is the route of administration? I'm waiting. What is
Topical.
Yes, it has to be topical. Your oral antibiotics or your IV antibiotics are of no use, because no use in treating
Barrier.
keratitis because
Avascular effect.
yes, because I
is
heard two
avascular.
answers. One saying avascular and another
Vascular.
saying barrier. Yeah, the answer is because there is a blood aqueous barrier. Your antibiotics which is given in the systemic route is not going to reach in sufficient quantities to the cornea. So the best would be your topical route. So it is in the form of instillation of drops. Okay, it has to be drops only. The advantage of drops is that it gets quickly absorbed, but the disadvantage is, yesterday I think ocular therapeutics was covered. So what is the disadvantage of drops? Anybody?
Can only be given to compile.
Yes, please.
Patient compliant cannot be maintained.
Children.
Yeah, all these can be a secondary disadvantage, but the most important thing is that the duration of action is short. Hence, drops have to be administered very frequently. Okay, so we have to advise the patient to apply or instill your antibiotic drops once in every hour whenever we are going to treat a corneal ulcer. Okay, and now coming to what antibiotic drops should we use. Here we follow two regimen. One is called as monotherapy, where we select broad spectrum antibiotic drops. Previously, tetracyclines and chloramphenicol were used, but nowadays, universal choice of treatment is fluoroquinolones in the form of ciprofloxacin drops, moxifloxacin, gatifloxacin, ofloxacin, anything. Okay, right now the antibiotic that is most commonly used is ciprofloxacin or moxifloxacin eye drops. Okay, but we have one more regimen called as duotherapy or combined therapy. Here what we do is we combine a drug which is specific for gram positive bacteria, and we combine it with one more drug which is specific for gram negative bacteria. Okay, and then we fortify them. What is the meaning of fortification? Fortify, what's a fort? Fortification, fortify, what is the meaning of it? Anyone? Fortification means strengthening. What we do is we take the commercially available drops and then we try to increase its strength by mixing the systemic in the systemic medicine. For example, if we take gentamicin, the commercially available drop is 0.3%. So what we do is we take the drops and combine the injection into it so that the ultimate concentration of the newly prepared fortified eye drops will be 1.3%. So what we do is we advise the patient to instill these drops along with fortified cefazolin drops. Here I should add a point that cefazolin is not available in the form of commercially available drops. So what we do is we take the injection form. We because it is an unstable drug in the form of drops, it is not manufactured in the form of drops. So what we do is we take the injection form, reconstitute it with distilled water, and then add it to artificial tears and freshly prepare the cefazolin drops. So with this, which is 5%. So this is called as fortification, and this is called as combined therapy, wherein we combine a gram positive, an antibiotic which is specific for gram positive with one antibiotic which is specific for gram negative, and then we tell the patient to instill these drops hourly. Okay, so we can either go for monotherapy, but if you feel that the patient is not responding to monotherapy, or if you feel that the ulcer is very, the organism might be very virulent and the ulcer is looking very violent, we can go for your fortification or combined therapy. Okay, so that is about specific treatment. Coming to the non-specific treatment, this is a supportive therapy. Here, what we have, there is one very, very important drug which we use, and that is your cycloplegic drugs. What are cycloplegic? What's the use of using a cycloplegic drug in case of an ulcer? Anybody? What does it do? Cycloplegia means what?
It reduces pain.
How? You're right, it reduces pain.
Paralysis of ciliary body.
Very good. See, what happens is whenever there is any kind of inflammation in the eye, any kind of deep inflammation, when I say deep inflammation, it can be uvea that is involved or your cornea that is involved. What happens is the ciliary body will go into a spasm. Because of this, there is severe pain to the patient. So what we do by giving cycloplegic drugs is we relieve this spasm, so the pain is relieved. One. Second thing is it also causes some amount of dilatation, so the blood supply improves and the your defense mechanisms are flown to a better possibility. Okay, so the drugs of choice here would be either 1% atropine eye ointment or 1% cyclopentolate or 2% homatropine. Okay, so these are the most important drugs for your treatment. So you have to first treat it with antibiotics, then any of the cycloplegic drops. Apart from that, you can give a systemic anti-inflammatory or analgesic drug and vitamin C, because vitamin C helps in faster healing, as you all know. Okay, so this is about your, in general, your treatment. Suppose you are giving the treatment and you are following up the patient, but the patient is not responding to your treatment at all. What do you do? What are the reasons for non-healing corneal ulcer? Anybody? What might be the most common reason? Most likely reason which you have to first rule out is? Anyone? I'm waiting for an answer. Yes? Okay, the most common reason is wrong diagnosis. Suppose you are going to treat a fungal keratitis as bacterial keratitis, then it's not going to respond at all. Okay, so it's like that. So the other common reasons are secondary glaucoma and underlying infection. That's your chronic dacryocystitis. See, what happens is whenever there is inflammation in the cornea, there is hypopyon, there are a lot of cells in the anterior chamber. So what happens is all these inflammatory cells will go and clog the trabecular meshwork, and they resist the aqueous flow, because of which there is secondary glaucoma. So when the pressure, intraocular pressure rises, then what happens? There will be a sort of ischemia or a decreased blood supply. So your drug is not going and reaching the site very effectively. That's why if you feel that the ulcer is not responding enough to your treatment, you have to look for secondary glaucoma and put the patient on anti-glaucoma medication also. Okay, and second, another important thing is underlying dacryocystitis. So do a regurgitation again, confirm if there is any dacryocystitis, if at all, tackle the dacryocystitis and along with your corneal ulcer management. Okay, so but after you do these also and still the ulcer is not healing, then what we can do is we can go for a mechanical debridement. That is, you scrape the whole ulcer. So when you do that, you are actually decreasing the bacterial load. You are also removing the top layer epithelium, so that whatever drug you give penetrates well to the place and it is available. Okay, so that is one thing. And other things are cauterization of the ulcer using trichloroacetic acid or peritomy. Peritomy is this. If you can look at your screen, just do 360 degrees. We take out the conjunctiva in the 360 degrees area of the limbus. So what does this, how does this help? It reduces the inflammatory pore into the cornea probably, and hence it reduces the, it helps in, this is one of the proposed theories for peritomy. Next. So how do we treat if if the patient arrives to you at a stage where the ulcer is going to perforate? See, this is the stage of, does anyone remember what is that called? When there is an impending perforation, that means the ulcer is not yet perforated, it's going to perforate. That stage is called as, anybody? Do you remember? What is descemetocele? Yes? What is descemetocele? Descemetocele is thinning of the Descemet's membrane, because of all the layers in the cornea, the Descemet's membrane is tough. It will resist the pressure up to a certain extent. But once the cornea has become very thin, the intraocular pressure is, it cannot bear the intraocular pressure anymore. So what happens is that the Descemet's membrane will pout out into a thin sac-like structure. So then it is called as descemetocele. So at this stage, if you can see the patient at this stage, you can still prevent a perforation by telling the patient not to strain, give him bed rest, apply a pressure bandage, or go for bandage contact lens or tissue adhesives. Okay. So by doing this, you can prevent a perforation. But if at all the patient has landed up in a perforated corneal ulcer, then how do you treat? It depends on the site and the size of the perforation. Suppose the perforation is very small, as you see on the left top corner, then what you can do is you can just use a tissue adhesive like cyanoacrylate glue. Just apply a little glue and apply bandage contact lens over it. You continue your ulcer treatment. Slowly the epithelialization starts taking place under the glue, and a scar tissue is formed, and the patient will land up in a small leukoma. Okay, so or else you can do one more thing called as conjunctival hooding or conjunctival grafting. If the ulcer is more towards the periphery, you can just bring the conjunctiva as a hood to give the cover to the perforated area. And you continue your antibiotics and your cycloplegics and other treatment for your ulcer, and slowly the healing will take place. But as you see in the left bottom picture, if the ulcer is occupying the entire cornea and then the entire cornea is totally perforated, you are left with no choice but to go for a keratoplasty. What is keratoplasty? What is keratoplasty? Anyone? I'm waiting for an answer. What is keratoplasty?
Transplantation of the cornea.
Yes, corneal transplant. And who is the donor here? Who is the donor? Who is the donor in corneal transplants? It has to be a cadaver. Okay, so we will go for a cadaveric transplant. So if you can look at the bottom right bottom picture, that's the picture of a keratoplasty. You can see the sutures. What we have done, this is a penetrating keratoplasty wherein the entire corneal button that is infected has been removed, and the new donor cornea is applied and stitched. Okay, so this was about bacterial corneal ulcer. Now we will quickly go through mycotic ulcer. What is mycotic ulcer? It's nothing but fungal keratitis. So if there is a corneal ulcer caused by fungal organism, then it is called as fungal keratitis. In general, all ulcers present with the same symptoms and same signs. That is, symptoms of pain, redness, watering, photophobia, and seeing a white opacity over the cornea. But fungal ulcers have got some specific features which I will be highlighting now. Okay, so when you take the history, the patient will give the history of injury with the vegetative matter. So whenever there is history of injury with the vegetative matter, you should suspect a fungal corneal ulcer. So this is most common in farmers. So in our setup, we get very frequently fungal corneal ulcers because most of our patients are rural population and most of them are into farming. So the ulcers we get here are mostly fungal ulcers. So what is important in the history here is injury with a vegetative matter. Okay, then also, fungal ulcers are common when there is excessive use of steroids. For example, there is a case of, chronic allergy, and the person has been using steroids for long. That person can land up in a fungal corneal ulcer. Similarly, a person who is severely immunocompromised also, the fungal ulcers are very common in them. So what are the causative organisms? You have filamentous fungi like Aspergillus and Fusarium, or yeasts like Candida and Cryptococcus. The yeasts are common mainly in immunocompromised people and those who are using steroids, but mostly your farmers and history of history of injury with vegetative matter. Usually the invading organism is either Aspergillus or Fusarium. So coming to the clinical features, the symptoms, as I told you, the symptoms are the same, but one important feature is the severity of the symptoms is really very, very less when compared to bacterial keratitis. So whereas the signs are more. So when we write the differences, we say bacterial ulcer, the signs and symptoms are equal in proportion. Fungal ulcer, the symptoms are very less when compared to the signs. And in viral ulcers, the signs are very less and the symptoms are very high. So the scale goes like this. Okay, so the patient, the eye looks fiery red, there is a big ulcer, sometimes there is hypopyon also, but the symptoms complained by the patient mostly will be some kind of irritation, mild photophobia, etc. And another important feature is the duration of onset. Duration of onset of the symptoms is quite late. It can be any time 1 week to 15 days after injury. So most of the times when the patient comes and you are suspecting a fungal ulcer and you ask for a history of any kind of injury, most of the times the patient has patient does not even remember because the duration is very long. The duration between the injury and the onset of symptoms is very long. Okay, so coming to the signs, like in any ulcer, there is circumcorneal congestion and there is an ulcer on the cornea. But how does this ulcer look in case of fungal keratitis? The ulcer has a dry look and it is dirty white or grayish white in color. The margins will have feathery margins. It is not well defined round or oval in shape. There will be a lot of feathery finger-like extensions. Look at the figure here. You can make out in the figure that there are a lot of finger-like or feather-like projections. Okay, there is CCC. There is a well-defined ulcer with feathery margins. And then another important feature is the presence of a sterile immune ring. So around the ulcerated area, there is a ring which is consisting of your leukocytes. So it is a sterile immune ring. Apart from that, there will be small there will be small satellite lesions. That means small lesions around the main ulcer. These are also sterile. There can be hypopyon also. Look at the picture here. Here the picture shows satellite lesions and also a hypopyon. What is hypopyon? Anyone?
Pus in the anterior chamber.
Yes, pus in the anterior chamber. Very good. And what is one feature of bacterial hypopyon that is very, very important, which I stressed in the class? What is one specific feature of hypopyon, which is unlike pus in any other area? I'm waiting.
Sterile
You can make
hypopyon.
an attempt. Yes.
Sterile hypopyon.
Very good. The hypopyon is usually sterile. That means the bacteria
No
are
bacteria.
not there. Yes, there are no bacteria in the hypopyon. That's why there is no need to drain the pus, isn't it? But unlike bacterial ulcer, in a fungal ulcer, the hypopyon is not sterile. It is non-sterile because the fungal hyphae, they invade into the anterior chamber. Okay, so the hypopyon is non-sterile and it is thick because fungal hyphae are there inside the hypopyon. The hypopyon is thick. Okay. Next, so these are the clinical features. I want someone to quickly summarize the the clinical features. In general, the symptoms and signs, if you compare, what is more?
Signs are more.
Yes, signs are more. Yes, and symptoms are less. The patient, and another very important feature in the history is
Injury with the vegetative matter.
yes,
Injury due to vegetative.
very good. Injury with vegetative matter is an important point, and the onset of symptoms
Duration is long.
is onset of the symptoms is long. Okay, so these important features which we have to take care while taking the history. Then in the signs, the important differentiating factors will be the ulcer is how does the ulcer look?
Finger-like
Feathery edges.
It is a dry ulcer. It is having feathery margins. It's not well defined. There are feather-like, finger-like projections which go into the surrounding stroma. There is an immune ring surrounding the ulcer, and also there are some more sterile spots. These are called as satellite. Okay. And one important thing about the hypopyon is that the hypopyon is thick and non-sterile.
Non-sterile, thick.
Thick. Very good. So that's it. So now how do we go about with our management of fungal corneal ulcer? See, as I told you, we have, depending on the clinical features, we make a diagnosis of fungal keratitis and we start antifungal treatment empirically. But before that, we have to get a laboratory evidence. So before starting the empirical treatment, what we do is we take the corneal scrapings. The method is just same as I told you before. You take a 26 gauge needle or you take a 50 number blade, scrape the ulcers from its edge or base, and then put it over a slide. Here, what we have to do is we have to see under KOH mount, or you can use calcifer white stain. Okay. And for culture, we use Seborrhoeids dextrose agar. Can you see the picture here? This is a KOH mount showing large fungal hyphae on either sides. The next one is a slightly magnified picture. This is how the fungal hyphae will look. So this can be done immediately. You take the scraping, put the KOH mount, go to the microbe lab, or if you have a microscope in the department, you can do a KOH mount look and then start your treatment. At the same time, you also send a culture. This is Seborrhoeids dextrose agar. And a fungal fungal growth will usually take a longer duration than bacteria. Probably bacteria growth will start showing by 3 or 4 days, whereas fungal will take almost a week. The lower one is Aspergillus on Seborrhoeids dextrose agar. These are called as demataceous fungi if it gives a blackish color. So after we take the culture, then we start the treatment. What are the antifungals that are available? Natamycin, nystatin, amphotericin B. These are specific for your filamentous fungi. Natamycin and nystatin are most commonly used in the form of 5% suspension. If you are suspecting a yeast, then you can start with fluconazole eye drops. Okay. These days, a newer drug called as voriconazole is being used, and it is giving very good results when the treatment is, when the fungus is resistant to natamycin or nystatin, it usually responds to voriconazole. Okay. So, but there is a problem with treatment of fungal ulcers. In fact, fungal infections anywhere in the body, we have a problem. What is the problem? Does anybody know? Why is it very difficult to treat fungal infections? Yes? Anyone? Make an attempt. Yes, I'm waiting. I can't hear anyone. I can't hear anyone. Just make an attempt. Treating fungal infections anywhere in the body is a challenge. Why? Because all the commercially available drugs right now are all fungistatic. Nothing is fungicidal. So we don't know when to stop. So when you start giving the medication, initially it will show a response. But then you have to go on treating, and the treatment will last for more than 3 or 4 weeks, probably sometimes up to 1 or 2 months, because it will take a long duration for all the fungi to disappear, because the drugs are not fungicidal. Okay. When do you go for oral antifungal therapy or systemic therapy? In case there is fungal endophthalmitis, which is common in case of immunocompromised patients, we have to go for your systemic medication along with your antifungal medication. Okay. So that was it about your bacterial keratitis and fungal keratitis. If any one of you is having any kind of doubts, you can go ahead. I'm there to clear. Otherwise, we will stop here. Any doubts?
Ma'am,
No? Yes?
I didn't understand how does peritomy help? Because if you remove the conjunctiva, won't it make it dry? Won't it make the eye drier and more prone to more infections?
No. What we are doing here is, in peritomy, we don't remove the entire conjunctiva. It is just 360-degree limbus. Around the limbus, 1 millimeter width of conjunctiva is removed. The rationale behind it is not very clearly proved, but what they claim is the amount of the the amount of the inflammatory outpour is decreased. So probably the ulcer which was not healing, probably it will heal faster. Okay, so usually what they do is they do a peritomy along with a graft, a conjunctival graft, or your cyanoacrylate glue or anything like that. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
You don't remove the entire conjunctiva. It's only 1 millimeter width of conjunctiva in the 360 degrees. Anything else? Nothing? Okay, so we shall stop here. Thanks a lot. This was my first e-class and I hope I have done a good job. I'll see you later next week. Thank you.